Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great rolled back the stone and set upon it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. The guards were shaken with fear of him and became like dead men. Then the angel said to the women in reply, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are seeking Jesus, the crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead, and he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you." Then they went away quickly from the tomb, fearful yet overjoyed, and ran to announce this to his disciples. And behold, Jesus met them on their way and greeted them. They approached, embraced his feet, and did him homage. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Last Sunday, on Palm Sunday, the Gospel was from St. Matthew. And Matthew wrote that while Jesus was carrying the cross when he was crucified, he made note of the fact that there were some women who stood at a distance watching Christ carrying the cross, watching the crucifixion. Mentions Mary Magdalene, a couple other Marys, women standing at a distance watching the crucifixion. And by the end of last Sunday's Gospel, when Jesus is laid in a tomb, Matthew noted that Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, they go along as well, and they go to the tomb, they watch where Jesus is laid, the stone is put over the entrance to the tomb. Then Matthew says that the two Marys remain sitting there facing the tomb. Kind of an odd thing in some ways, where they just sit and kind of face the stone, right? The stone that blocks the entrance, maybe thinking whatever thoughts they were, what was, what could have been, the sadness that they had at the time, until the two Marys need to begin the preparation of Passover. The next time they can go back is on Sunday morning, early in the morning at dawn. The two Marys go back to see the tomb, is what St. Matthew writes this morning in the Gospel. So they're going to the cemetery, like we sometimes go to the cemetery. And they go to see Jesus again. But instead of meeting Jesus, instead of seeing him, instead of anointing his body, they meet the angel of the Lord. And the angel of the Lord says, "Jesus the crucified, the one whom you're looking for, is not here." So you're not going to find Jesus the crucified here anymore. You're never going to find him here again, because Jesus the crucified has been raised from the dead. Because Jesus the crucified doesn't exist anymore. He's gone. There was a moment in time, it's finished, it's done, but he's been raised from the dead. Jesus the crucified is not in this tomb or any other tomb or anywhere else in the world. And that's because he told you he would be raised from the dead. He predicted this. He said that even though you heard it but didn't quite understand it at the time or didn't believe it, you can't find Jesus the crucified. He's not here or anywhere anymore. And the angel of the Lord invites the two Marys, says, "Come inside the tomb and see where he was." So before it, on Good Friday, you stood at a distance to watch the crucifixion. When he was buried, you stood on the other side of the stone. You stood just outside the tomb, sitting there and watching. Now come inside the tomb. You who wanted to get closer to Jesus and are looking for him this morning, come inside the tomb all the way. And you can see where he was and where he's not anymore and never will be again inside the tomb. See that he's no longer here. He's no longer Jesus the crucified. He's no longer Jesus the dead. So come inside the tomb and prove it to yourselves. Experience it for yourselves. So now come on inside. The angel of the Lord then tells them, the two Marys, to go quickly, leave the tomb, and go quickly and tell the disciples two things. First, tell the disciples that Jesus is raised from the dead. That is, he's now Jesus the resurrected, not Jesus the crucified. Tell them Jesus is risen from the dead. And secondly, tell the disciples to go to Galilee. If you want to see Jesus, go to Galilee, not this empty tomb, because he will precede you to there. Go to Galilee, where you disciples first met Jesus. Back in Galilee, where Jesus called you to be his followers, where Jesus first started teaching and working miracles, where he first started his public ministry. Go back to Galilee, because that's where you're going to meet him, where you met him for the very first time. And as the two Marys go towards the disciples and also on their own way to Galilee, on their own way back to the beginning, they meet Jesus the resurrected. Not Jesus the crucified, but Jesus the resurrected. They embrace Jesus, the one whom they saw from a distance on Good Friday. They can now embrace the Lord they've been looking for. On their journey to meet Jesus on Easter morning, the two Marys didn't get what they expected. And that's good. They got a lot more than what they expected. Far more than they ever anticipated or thought. For us, the journey into the embrace of Jesus is often just as long and circuitous and painful as it was for the two Marys. As we want to seek Jesus and find him in our lives, sometimes it's not as easy as it would appear. And sometimes we don't find him where we think we're going to find him. But two things help us along that journey, just as those two things helped the two Marys. First is to go back to the beginning. Go back to the beginning. Go back to Galilee in your life. That is, go back to where you first met Jesus. Go back to when you first met Jesus. Go back to when your faith was strong, if you don't find it so strong today. Go back to the beginning, whether it's as a child, as a teenager, a young adult, a retreat experience, some other powerful experience of Christ in your life. Go back to a time when you did believe, if you have a hard time believing today. Because your faith was there at some point in your life, and it still can be. Many things happen along the way of our faith journey, and maybe your faith has been tested, or maybe it's been strengthened, maybe it's been weakened, or even seemingly killed, dead like Jesus was dead. But go back to where it was strong before. Your faith isn't dead, it's dormant maybe, but not dead. And dormancy is not death. You know, when we lose something, so what do you do when you lose something? You go back to where you last saw it, right? Oh yeah, I had it over here, it was in this room of the house. Oh yeah, it was in these pockets where I had my car keys, right? You go back to where you last had it. Do the same for faith sometimes in life. Go back to where you last knew you had it, where you last knew it was strong, or the people it was strong with, right? If it's your children or your parents or somebody you can go back to in time and in place. Because like I said, your faith isn't dead, it may just be dormant from time to time. Certainly as you go back in time, as you go back to that experience, it's not the same, right? We're all older now, you're more mature, you've had different experiences in life, but the remnant of the seed of faith remains. And I would suggest it remains for all of our life. It's always there and never gone forever. The second thing that helps us on our journey into the embrace of Jesus is to go back to the tomb as well. To sit facing the tomb, to sit facing the pain, the sorrow, the difficult moments of your life, the loss, the trying experiences of your life. To sit there and maybe just stare at it, the same way that the two Marys did. So you approach from a distance, you approach your pain from a distance, kind of go back into it, sit facing the tomb, facing the stone, because Jesus isn't far away, right? As the two Marys sat facing the stone, Jesus was close by. He was on the other side of that stone, right? He's just on the other side. They couldn't quite get there at the time. And they didn't get there all the way until Easter Sunday, when they were able to step inside the tomb again. Sometimes we need to go back to revisit from time to time the painful experience of our life, to sit there and to stare at it. You know, maybe the angel of the Lord takes away the stone and invites us back in a more powerful way, because inside the tomb, it's a place of transformation and power. It's not a place of only sadness and only death and only finality. It's a place of transformation. And sometimes when we go back to the experience, it can be transformed. We can see Jesus there. We experience it in a different way. and then, hopefully, we leave it for good. Right? I'm not sure the two Marys ever went back to the tomb again. They didn't need to, right? They knew something different. They got beyond that in their life. They revisited it, they buried it, the experience there, and they moved on. And maybe we try to do the same in our own lives as well. When the angel of the Lord then invites you as adults to reflect on past experiences, when we do so, we bring a new light and a new maturity to those experiences. The joys aren't the same as when we're young. The faith experience isn't exactly the same. The sorrows aren't exactly the same either. We bring a new light and maturity on our reflection. However, if we look for only Jesus the crucified in our life, only at bad experiences and only at the bad things that may come from them, we're not always going to find Jesus there until we start looking for Jesus the resurrected as well. He's present in the difficult experiences in our lives. He was present in our lives from the beginning also. We can't look for a Jesus the crucified who doesn't exist anymore. It's now Jesus the resurrected, the new, the risen. The crucified has been transformed into the resurrected. Jesus has moved on in life, and he leads us and invites us to move as well. In order to draw closer to Jesus then, we start from a distance, looking at painful experiences, come a little bit closer. But as we go to meet the embrace of Jesus, we pass from the experience of the tomb and difficult moments in our lives, and we go back to the beginning, a place where Christ was. And always along the way, we meet Jesus the resurrected, the one who calls us into his loving and forgiving embrace.